on healthcare. It was really kind of fascinating. They kind of beat each other up, which was also kind of fascinating. They're all Democrats, and they've all got different ideas. Okay, so this is what we were talking about last night, or yesterday, or day before yesterday.
Monday?
Monday, that's the time. 1960, healthcare was only 5.1% of our GDP. Now it is, what does it say, 17.6%. For that reason, of course, we need to do something about it. The biggest problem we have in the United States, one of the problems we have in the United States is that we have allowed middlemen to start controlling all of these ideas, all the healthcare, and the middlemen in this case are HMOs and insurance companies. So they're talking about universal healthcare or Medicare for all, where everybody would be covered. Now you guys don't have to worry about this because you already have universal healthcare. You don't have to worry about, well, I guess you do if you're traveling.
Yeah.
Where are you going to get health care? Do you have a card? Did they give you a card so that you can go to an emergency room in Atlanta to get health care? And they'll give you health care? Probably. Why? What is this? So they didn't give you one? You don't have one? You don't have a card so that you can show them that you're IHS? You don't have that? But you do.
I do.
You need a card.
Yeah. Oh,
Just in case you travel off the reservation. Otherwise, you have to stay on the reservation or play that really strange game where you're hop from one reservation to the other. I don't know what that's called. Hopscotch, I guess. Okay. Otherwise, you can't get health care. Yeah, 17.6%, $8,233 per man, woman, and child in the United States. That's a lot. Of course, I'm old enough, I'm on Medicare. That's kind of nice. But then again, I'm military, so I've got TRICARE. That's kind of nice.
I know.
But my primary is the school's insurance company, so I don't have to pay for anything. Sadly, in the United States, despite the fact that our health care is more expensive than anybody else's in the entire United States, we are ranked 37th in the world. Out of 191 nations, here we are right there. That's the United States. 36 countries above us. Most of those countries have, and they were talking about it last night on the debates, almost all the other countries in the world have universal health care. Certainly all the European countries have universal health care. So when Bernie Sanders talks about being a social democrat, what he's really talking about is universal health care. In the 1950s, they almost passed universal health care in the United States. In 1950, Truman was president at the time. And the doctors didn't like it because they were afraid they were going to start controlling their costs. They were going to start controlling how much they could charge for medical procedures. So the AMA formed and became and started talking against this. They said it was a communist form of healthcare, and they were able to defeat it. They call it, by referring to people that were in favor of it, as communists. Okay. So nobody tried to pass universal health care in the United States until Bill Clinton. And then Bill Clinton asked his wife if she would be in charge of universal health care in the United States. He wanted to pass something. And the same thing happened again. It wasn't just the AMA this time, it was the Republican Party just went berserk and talked about how communistic it would be to have universal health care, and it was defeated. Okay. So what we needed both houses of Congress to be Democratic, to be controlled by the Democrats, in order to get universal health care passed. So then it was Richard Nixon that wrote Medicare into law, as interesting as that is. Right behind Medicare came Medicaid. So it was Richard Nixon, the Republican, the hyper-conservative Republican, who was actually able to get some type of universal health care for the elderly and for the poor. That's Medicaid and Medicare. But of course, we pay into Medicare, don't we? Well, if you work, you pay into Medicare. Okay. And now I'm reaping the benefits because I have Medicare. So
Here they
then,
get Medicaid, I think.
I'm sorry?
I think the nomination they do Medicaid, which is under access.
You don't get Medicare
No, they
for
do.
your elderly? Okay.
They do, Medicaid.
Medicare.
Yeah, Medicare.
Okay. So then Barack Obama became president of the United States in 2008. And Barack Obama wanted to pass universal health care. And of course, the Republicans are screaming, he's black. And then they started screaming that he wants to give universal health care to all the black people. That's what they were talking about. So he wasn't actually able to get universal health care. He was able to get what they call the Affordable Care Act. And the Affordable Care Act did a lot of really positive things for people that were sick. One of the things was that insurance companies, they could look at your health history and they could say, well, we're not going to pay for your diabetes medication. That's a pre-existing condition. Oh, we're not going to pay for that broken back you had when you were 16 years old. That's a pre-existing condition. So any back problems you may potentially have, we're not going to pay for them. Your insurance doesn't cover that. But Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, stated that they had to cover everything. So they couldn't disqualify somebody because of pre-existing conditions. Okay. So in 2008, they passed the Affordable Care Act. And it's been in place for, well, it was in 2009 actually. And then part of it was passed in 2010. So it's been in place for about 10 years. And it increased the number of people in the United States that were insured. Last night, Senator Sanders was saying that 127,000 people in the United States are either not insured at all or underinsured. That doesn't include you guys because you're all IHS, you have IHS, which is a treaty right that was signed when you became, when you agreed to give away some of your land, a lot of your land. That was a treaty right. So they have to give you free health care for the rest of, as long as you exist. As long as they admit that you exist. So they could, if they do away with all the reservations, then potentially they can do away with that law as well. But by then, we may have universal health care. It all depends on who gets elected next time. Donald Trump's trying to do away with pre-existing conditions. He's trying to do away with Obamacare. He's trying to do away with the Affordable Care Act. For some reason, he hates Barack Obama, and he's trying to reverse everything that Obama did. And this is one of the huge things that, and he's pissed. He's really upset about the fact he can't get rid of Obamacare. He loaded the Supreme Court with conservative justices in hopes of overturning Obamacare, but he was unsuccessful. And the person that voted against overturning Obamacare was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who's also conservative, but he said this isn't right. So there you go. And it wasn't, they weren't able to get rid of it at a vote of 5-4. So he was the deciding vote. Why am I talking about this? Okay, so we have really expensive health care, the most expensive health care in the United States, but we are not the healthiest people in the world, which doesn't make any sense. All of these other countries have universal health care, and they love it. They think it's wonderful. Japan, Hong Kong, and of course the Japanese live longer than everybody else. Japan, Hong Kong, France, Switzerland, Spain, Australia, Sweden, Canada, Italy, Puerto Rico. Some of these, Puerto Rico is part of the United States. Now why in the world would Puerto Ricans live longer than people on the mainland? Is it that healthy to live on an island in the Caribbean?
There's not a huge population.
It's the most,
That's really tiny.
it's packed. It's packed with people. It's the largest, it's the most concentrated massive humanity on Earth is on Puerto Rico. I know, this is exciting. And it can't be the fact that it's an island in the Caribbean, because we saw before that Haiti has the lowest life expectancy, oh, there it was, the lowest life expectancy of everybody on the earth. And Haiti's right here, Puerto Rico's right there. So it can't be the area. Why in the world do Puerto Ricans live longer than people on the mainland? There's got to be a reason. I want to be Puerto Rican. That's not fair. I'm moving.
My daughter's half.
There you go. There you go. She's so lucky. Ah, I'm jealous. I want to be Puerto Rican when I grow up. But it's not going to happen, is it? I need to be nicer to Scott. Norway, Finland, Israel, Austria, Singapore, New Zealand, Greece, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, England, and Wales. Portugal, Northern Ireland, Ireland, Costa Rica. Costa Rica? That's in Central America. They're not supposed to live longer than we do. And Chile. So, I'm a male. You see the short hair. Obviously, I'm a male. My life expectancy right now is 75.2. I've got 5 more years to go. I know. 5 more. I want to be a girl. 10 years, that's not fair. I want to be a Puerto Rican girl. I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, we're 37. So the next election has a ton to do with this. It does. It has a lot to do with health psychology. One of the things we're noticing with this president is that the most important thing to him is money. That seems to be the economy. And he doesn't want to spend money for things. He's trying to do away with Obamacare, which is helping all these millions and millions of people. Why doesn't he care about those people? I don't know. Ancient views, prehistoric medicine, illness caused by evil spirits. As you can see, they have cut holes in these people's brains to let the evil spirits out. Everybody knows, how do you get rid of evil spirits? You cut holes in people's skulls so that the evil spirits can escape. Why don't they just stay in there? Or why don't more evil spirits crawl in that hole? I guess I don't understand evil spirits very well. Anyway, that's what they did. These are skulls from South America. As you can see, they used to shape their skulls. They did that by putting boards on their heads, by wrapping them with things to make them more attractive, by shaping their skulls. You could do this with your own kids. Try it. I'm kidding. Or go ahead, try it, I don't know. Anyway, as you can see, they've shaped their skulls. One of the reasons that the people up north are called the flatheads is because they used to put boards on their heads and flatten out their foreheads, as strange as that is. Now, the odd thing is that it wasn't the people living on the Flathead Reservation, it wasn't them. They weren't the ones that were flattening out their kids' heads. It was other Indians. This is how stupid white people are. They can't get anything right. The Nez Perce, pierced noses, they never pierced their noses. I know, the wrong name. How stupid are they? Ancient medicine, demons and punishment by the gods cause illness in Egypt. Once again, it's evil spirits. So if you have an evil spirit wandering around, bouncing around in your brain, just punch a hole in your skull. Just a thought. All right. I know there's a new television show called Evil. I'm guessing it's evil spirits. Hippocrates was the first modern doctor, and that's why why doctors take the Hippocratic oath. It's an oath that was written by Hippocrates 2,500 years ago. He rejected ancient focus of mysticism and superstition, that whole evil spirit thing, so he stopped trephination. He was the father of modern medicine. He believed that there were 4 humors, that we had, it's kind of like aren't there 4 holy colors? White, black, turquoise and yellow, right? Okay. They believed the same thing, well, similar. They had red, yellow, black, and green were their four colors, their four humors, and you needed a balance of all this stuff in order to be okay. You needed hojo of some kind or another, right? Or, well, at least you needed these four colors to be in balance. I'm not sure what color that would be. If these were Easter eggs, what color would it be? If we mixed red, yellow, black, and green together, what color would that be? Purple. Two of you have on the right color outfits today, because that's the color it would be if we mixed all four of those colors together. Ah, there's another one. What is it about maroon today? Oh, this is exciting. We have 3 people with maroon on. I'm so excited. It's not hard to make me excited, I guess. About 1,800 years ago, he's awake. I saw him. Okay. 1,800 years ago, Claudius Galen discovered a great deal from dissection of animals and treating the serious injuries of gladiators. I found a cat. Harlan, you were here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw the cat. Okay. And it came up and wanted you to pet it. Okay, it's at my house now. Okay. It was really kind of an interesting cat because you could see all of its bones. That was kind of cool. Yeah, you could see all of its bones. Its thigh bones, you could see its thigh bones. Now, normally a cat's not so skinny that you can see its thigh bones. But you could count its ribs, you could count its vertebra. You saw the points of its pelvis sticking up on its back. It looked like one of those cows that's dying in the drought. That's what it looked like. And I have no idea why it looked that way. But I'm feeding it and we'll see if it survives. I know, I'm as worried about it as you are. Anyway, I have syllabi. Okay, what do we need to know about the syllabus? Let me think for a second. What do you need to do to pass? There's a paper on any subject that's in the textbook. This is health psychology. So you can talk about diabetes, you talk about high blood pressure, you can talk about acupuncture. I mean, there's just a ton of things you guys can write papers on. There's a discussion question, and like most of my discussion questions, there are no right answers. There are only wrong answers. No, that's not right. There aren't any wrong answers. There are only right answers. So all I want you to do is talk to me. That's the only reason I put those in there. And if you talk to me, then you get credit for the discussion. I like conversation. I want to know what you're thinking. If you don't think very much about the question I asked you, then you'll probably get a lower grade. The more you put in there, the higher your grade is going to be. What else is there? There are 3 tests, one after chapter 5, one after chapter 10, and one after chapter 15. 75 questions per test. It's really kind of fun. 5-page paper, and then we have the discussion questions, and that's it. Okay. If anybody has any questions about anything, this is online as well as in the classroom. You don't have to be here. If you miss a class, you can always watch the movie. All right.
I have a question about the paper.
Yes.
So we're just comparing the genetic culture to another culture?
No, that's in cultural psychology. Is that what it says there? Is that what it says there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, did I give you the wrong one? Is it health psychology?
It says health
Yeah.
psychology.
Ah, shoot.
Now we know you copied and pasted.
Damn. No, that's cultural psychology. Okay. I copied and pasted the wrong thing. No, it needs to be about something about dealing with, thank you for noticing that, by the way. You get an F for today. No, something about health psychology. I'm sorry, I don't read my own syllabi. Obviously. Oh, man, oh, jeez, and this is online. Oh, great, there's like 500 people in this class. Jeremiah has a class, he's got 77 students.
Oh my goodness.
And it's online. Oh, man, he's gonna get blasted. All right, yeah, to write a paper on health psychology. How's that? I do count lines. I don't know why I get so irritated with short papers, but I will take points off for a paper that's not actually 5 pages long. And I do count lines, I don't count words, I count lines. I know OJ counts words. I don't know how he does that, or why. And he doesn't count words shorter than 3 letters. OJ?
What the heck?
I know. I count lines, so each page is 23 lines long, so 23 times 5 is 115. Okay, so if you have 115 lines, you're good to go. I don't count headers, headings. So if you tell me this is my conclusion, this is my abstract, I don't count the word abstract, I don't count the word conclusion. I only count actual lines of text. However, if you have one word at the bottom of a paragraph, I count that word as a line. So I know I'm mean in some ways, and I'm kind of almost just about nice in others. Okay, yeah, so you just write a paper about something dealing with health psychology. You can write about Claudius Galen if you like. He developed a widely used system of pharmacology. He was looking at things that worked, at natural plants that actually worked. He's kind of a cool guy. Traditional Oriental medicine, it was founded on the principle of internal harmony. Once again, we're talking about harmony. We're talking about harmony with the ancient Greeks. Now we're talking about harmony with the Asians. So we're talking about balance, we're talking about harmony. And of course, you know that if you go into a room and there's dark stuff on that side and there's light stuff on this side, the balance is off, the feng shui is off. You know, the Asian people do a lot of things with balance. Things have to be in balance. If you've ever seen a Japanese kimono, the reason that they choose the colors that they choose, and sometimes they're really ugly. I mean, just the Japanese have, their colors are just way, way off. Anyway, the reason they do it is because it has to be balanced. They've got these rules of balance. So you have to put a maroon kimono with a pink sash or something. You know, it's their rules. It's not like. Have you ever listened to their music? Oh my God, it sounds like somebody stepped on my cat. Tries to kill my cat. It's pretty bad. But I mean, that's what they like to hear, so there you go. And this is known as ki. Well, ki is actually the vital energy or the life force, and in order for this life force to be functional, everything has to be balanced. That's one of the reasons why they're able to use needles. They stick needles in your skin and in select areas, and that balances some other area of your body. So if they stick it in your foot, it may help your hand, you know, all of these crazy things. Herbal therapy, they use herbs as well. They use meditation. Yes. Wait a minute, oh, we already covered this, didn't we? No. They use meditation and also Tai Chi. Tai Chi has to do with movement. Movement in harmony, movement in balance, and that's what Tai Chi is all about. It means balance, so it has to do with balance. And you make a step with your foot, and at the same time you move your arm to balance you, so you're never off balance. This is also a fighting form, Tai Chi, and what they do is they will try to get the other person out of balance. So they'll try to knock them off of their feet. And here they are, of course they're moving really fast, but they're trying to knock them off their balance. If we're talking about Asian systems, Asian medical knowledge, the Indians, people from India, from Asian India, the Indians from Asia established a form of medical knowledge 800 years ago. and they call it Ayurveda. Ayurveda is two words put together. It means longevity and knowledge. So what they were trying to do is promote people learning things, and because they learned things and they learned how to take care of themselves, they had longevity. Some of the oldest people in the world live in India, as interesting as that is. India, if they're Hindu, they are vegetarians. They don't eat any meat. In India, the only time they eat meat is if somebody runs over a cow. Cows are sacred to them, so they don't actually eat the meat. They will drink the milk, but they won't eat the meat. Health is a balance of bodily humors. Once again, we're talking about humors. We're talking about where fluid comes from. The Veda, the Pitta, and the Kapha are the three areas. Of course, in Western thought, there's 4 different humors. In the Indian thought, it's 3 humors. As fun as that is. Okay. Okay, let's talk about Europeans for a minute. Europeans are kind of stupid. They live with their cows, they live with their pigs, they live with their chickens. And because they live with their livestock, and then sometimes they literally live with their livestock. When I was in Germany, and I was in Germany from 79 through 82. When I was in Germany, I lived in a farming village, and in the farming village, the people lived in their barns. Well, actually, the bottom floor was the barn, and then they lived on the 2nd and the 3rd floors. So it's real hilly, so they tend to build their barns into the hill, into the ground. So the first floor is underground, and the 2nd floor is actually on the 1st floor. Anyway, it's a basement. So the barn is the basement. I was living in a little town called Mauschbach. It was right on the French border. The courthouse had pigs. They raised pigs, and they used those pigs to finance things throughout the year. So they had a big carnival, and they financed the carnival by butchering the pigs. And they ate some pigs, of course, but they also sold some sausage, and they sold some of the pigs. But they lived in the basement. These pigs lived in the basement the whole year. And then they were yearlings. They brought them out, they butchered them. And they'd never seen the sun. It was the most horrible sound you've ever heard. These screaming pigs who suddenly, they had only seen artificial light, and all of a sudden they took them outside during right around noon, and that was the first time they'd ever seen the sun. And they started screaming. It was just horrible. Of course, the Germans are laughing because, they're Germans. So they have no feelings for these things. Anyway, so these guys are living with their pigs, they're living with their cows, and they're living with their chickens. And because of this, if the chicken had a disease, the chicken would give the disease to the human. And then the human would get sick, and then he would give his disease back to the pig or the cow or the chicken. Okay, that's the way it worked. So we've got a primary host, and we've got an intermediate host, and then we've got a tertiary host. So one of the things that would happen was that they would infect their pigs with smallpox, and then their pigs would have the smallpox virus, and then they would mutate inside the pig, and then they'd give it back to the humans, and it became more and more virulent every time they passed it back and forth. Okay. And this has been going on for thousands of years in Europe. They live with their livestock. So then they decided, let's leave Europe and go to the Americas. Let's go to North and South America. Well, these guys had been cultivating these diseases for, ever. And so they brought all these diseases to the Americas. And you guys had never seen a pig or a cow or a chicken. Well, you'd see prairie chickens, but not their type of fowl. And when they came over here, you didn't have any immunity to any of their diseases. You got the diseases, and since you had no immunity, it killed you. It killed you. There was an estimation that potentially 99% of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, that's South, Central, and North America, died from diseases, not because their guns were bigger or their swords were sharper, it was because they gave you diseases. As a matter of fact, when the Aztecs were conquered, the Mexico City at the time was had been contaminated with smallpox, and people were dying by the tens of thousands. So that's how they conquered the Americas. You know, the conquistadors, 563 Spaniards defeat, 5 million Aztecs. Well, how the hell did they do it? It's because their steel was sharper. Hell no. You could have walked all over these guys and crushed them. No, that wasn't what happened. What happened was there were all these diseases that they brought over from Europe. But not all the diseases come from Europe. Some of them come from Asia. Every year we come down with the flu. People catch the flu. Where the hell does it come from? Why is it new? Why can't we find a vaccine that kills off the flu? The answer is because every year the flu comes from Asia. And when it comes, the reason it comes from Asia is because Asians fertilize with human feces, with human manure. They put it in their fields, and then guess who gets to go out and root around in the field? Well, the pigs do. So the pigs, if somebody's sick, they got the squirts. That stuff goes out in the field, and then the pig messes with it, and now the pig's got it. Now they've got the flu, but it doesn't kill the pigs, but it mutates in the pigs. So every year we get a new strain of influenza, and that's the way it works. That's one of the reasons why if you get a flu shot, it might not work. Some years it's like 27% effective or 32% effective. Well, why doesn't it kill everything? Well, the reason it doesn't kill everything is because every year it changes. And some years it changes a lot more than other times. So it mutates when it goes back to Asia. And then it comes to the United States, and it walks its way across the United States. It's really fascinating. The more interaction we have between East Coast and West Coast, the faster it moves across the country. Normally the flu season is in October, November, December. When it starts to get cold, people start to stay inside. The kids are in school, they don't get to go out for recess. It's too cold outside, too wet outside. That's when the flu hits. Then they all get colds, which is no big deal. But flu kills people. And it's getting more and more virulent every year. It's killing more and more people every year. And the reason is because it's mutated from last year. We can give all those old farts shots, flu shots, but if it's only 27% effective, we're going to have a lot of old people that catch the flu. Well, old people, their immune system isn't nearly as strong as you puppies. You guys can fight off that flu, but I'm 70 years old. My immune system is wimpy. It's weak. I can't fight things off like that. But I never get sick. Now, why is that? What's so good about me that I don't get sick, but other people catch the flu? Other people get colds. I never catch a cold. Why is that? Why? Am I Superman? Let's leave it right there. Am I Superman? The answer is no. Hell no, I'm not Superman. What happened was I was a lab tech. So I got to interact with all the sick people. And because I interacted with all the sick people, I came in contact with all of these diseases. And since I interacted with them, I didn't get sick. My immune system had to build up a resistance to all of these strange diseases. So I never get sick. I never catch the flu. It's worse than that, because part of my immune system is gone. I lost my spleen in a soccer game. I was talking to Scott about it this morning. I lost my spleen. He used to play soccer. Okay. So he understood what I was talking about. I lost my spleen in a soccer game in 1985. And your spleen is a very important part of your immune system. So all you guys have spleens, and your spleen is keeping you healthy. Congratulations. And I don't have one. So I should be dead. Every year I should catch the flu, I should get the shingles, all of these things should infect me, and nothing, I never get sick. And we'll talk about that more, why I am a Superman. I say that to my wife and she laughs. Anyway, so here we are in Europe. So we're in Europe and all of these diseases are killing off thousands and thousands of people. I was watching 60 Minutes on Sunday and they were talking about Venice. Venice has a big festival every year. At one point, 50,000 people died in Venice. Well, they only had 75,000 people in the town. So 2/3 of their population died of the bubonic plague. Where does the bubonic plague come from? We had no clue. We didn't know. We didn't know what bacteria were. We didn't know what viruses were. Europeans came over here, came over to the Americas, they spread all these diseases, and they had no idea what was going on. They were just as dumb as dirt. Had no clue. So where do all these diseases come from? Well, it turns out that the bubonic plague is actually a bacterial infection. Almost all the diseases that killed you guys off were viral infections. Smallpox, measles, mumps, chickenpox, all of these diseases, they're viral liver diseases that killed off the people in the Northeast. They were all viral diseases. Viral diseases hit hard and then they go away because viruses can't live for very long. But bacteria live for a much, much longer period of time. So when the bubonic plague hit Venice, it just kept killing and killing and killing and killing. And they were afraid it would never go away. They called it the Black Death. And the reason they called it the Black Death was because people's lymph nodes would kind of explode. And when they did, of course, it caused a bruise. So and they called them buboes. That's why it's the bubonic plague. Anyway, they had these swollen lymph nodes. And you have lymph nodes in your armpits, you have lymph nodes in your neck, you have lymph nodes in your groin. And so these would explode and then they would be dead. And so when they picked up the dead body, they were all bruised and black. And so they pick them up and take them out. Okay. But they weren't infective. That was the weird part. But they didn't know where the disease came from. They had no clue. Turns out it was on a flea. The bacteria was on a flea. And the flea was on a rat. And they lived with the rats and they didn't think about it, how horrible this was to live with rats or live with mice. I hate mice. I hate rats. Anyway, it is here in the United States right now. Bubonic plague is here. It may be on this reservation, but don't worry about it. It's not going to infect you, probably. Right now, it's wiping out the rodent population. So the ground squirrels, the prairie dogs, and the tree squirrels are all dying of the bubonic plague, as weird as that is. When I was in the Air Force, we had an outbreak of bubonic plague on the Jicarilla Apache Reservation up in northern New Mexico. Sadly, I was stationed in Lubbock, Texas at the time. And because of that, we were the closest laboratory to the infection. So we had to go and collect specimens from the reservation in northern New Mexico. It was fun. And I hate rats, okay? I just hate rats. So what we were doing, we were wandering around and there was only 2 people that got sick and we took care of them. We gave them antibiotics and took care of them. But you know, this thing, if this starts to spread, then you gotta nip it in the bud because it can become an epidemic. So we're walking around picking up dead rats. That's what we did, and dead mice. What a great job that is. And of course, they paid us overtime because we were in the military, right? This is too much fun. Anyway, the bacteria is known as Yersinia pestis, is the name of the bacteria that causes the bubonic plague. Once upon a time, when I was in the service back in the 1970s, the only way to identify the bacteria was on the foot pads of mice. So that's where we grew it, on the foot pads of mice. It took like 2 years to grow it. It was insane. By the time we grew the bacteria, it was all over with. We didn't have to worry about it anymore, as stupid as that is. Okay, so this is the Dark Ages, and the reason they called it the Dark Ages was because the church wouldn't allow you to think about anything except religion. So that's it. I mean, you couldn't think about anything else. There was no science, there was no literature. All the literature were poems to Jesus and to God and that kind of stuff. They wrote hymns. There was no music. All the art, pictures of Mary, pictures of Jesus, pictures of John the Baptist, cool stuff like that. All right. There was nothing else. They wouldn't allow you to do anything else. And so because science was truncated, because it was stopped, they called it the Dark Ages. And things didn't change until the Renaissance. And the Renaissance was in the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries. During the Renaissance, of course, everything changed. And the reason that the church was no longer powerful was because of the Protestant Reformation. The church was the only game in town. If you wanted to be religious, you had to go to the Catholic Church. That was the only game in town. There was no Mormon church. The Mormons didn't come around until the 19th century. There wasn't any Protestant church. They didn't come around until the 16th century. So until from zero, when Jesus was born, I think this is the way it works. From zero to 1517, the Catholic Church was the only game in town. Except it wasn't called the Catholic Church. It was called the Church because it was the church. It was the only one. In about 1000, the church split. It split in half, and it became the Orthodox Church, and it became the Catholic. That's when it became the Catholic Church. So there was the Roman Catholic Church because they were centered in Rome, and the Orthodox Church was centered in Istanbul, which is in Turkey. Okay. And they became the Greek Orthodox Church, the Serbian Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, all the Orthodox churches. Okay. Whew. But still, if we're talking about Europe, we're talking about the church controlling everything. And if another religion popped up, or somebody started talking about religion in a different way, they would mount a crusade against them, and they would kill them. They would wipe them out because they were blasphemers. Remember, everything had to do with religion. As cool as that is. Then in 1517, the Protestant Reformation started. Actually, the Reformation started long before that, but they kept killing them all off. Anybody that didn't want to be Catholic, or they said that the Catholic Church was wrong about this, they just killed them. They had crusades and they killed them. And they killed them in really interesting ways. They burned them at the stake. They stoned them to death. They would lock them in graves and then not allow them out, so they would starve to death. That was a lot of fun. Everybody had a good time. Then in 1517, of course, everything changed. So suddenly the Renaissance starts, because the Catholic Church isn't in charge of everything now. So if you read literature from the 14th century or the 15th century, before the Reformation, it's all about Jesus. It's all about God. It's all about religious stuff. So there you go. That's the way it works. So then the Renaissance starts, and now all of a sudden we've got science again. And this is great. So what's been going on since the church shut down human thought? What happened? What has happened in the world? Well, luckily, the Catholic Church wasn't the only group of people in the world. There were also people living in Africa that weren't Christian. So they continued to look into things. They continued scientific investigation. So most of our thought comes from the people that lived during the Dark Ages who were not being controlled by the church. But there was still scientific thought, and most of that was the Arabs, people in that portion of the Middle East. Okay, so in 1517, the Reformation starts, and we start science again, and of course this wouldn't have been allowed. That's obscene. That's a naked person. That's not right. We don't paint pictures of naked people. We do paint pictures of naked angels and naked cherubs. You know, the whole Cupid thing. Cupid's naked. He doesn't have any clothes on. I think Cupid's a male. Yeah. Okay. He's a cherub. So, and I've been to these churches, it's so freaky, you'll go in and you go, geez, this is pornographic. There's all this nudity on the walls because, well, that's, I don't know. But it had to do with religion, so it was okay. And, this is so weird. We went to the cathedral down in Peru, Lima, Peru. And I had to take pictures. I felt so bad about it. I got these pictures of naked people from the church, and it's a cathedral. So it's religious, so it's okay, right? Nudity, as long as it's religious, is okay, right? All these naked people, these cherubs with these huge, huge breasts. What's that all about? I get confused really easily. Anyway, okay, so now all of a sudden the Protestants take over and they put clothes on everybody. So everything ended, all the fun pornography was gone. So the Renaissance starts. There was a reemergence of scientific inquiry and medical study. Before that, people were just dying and they had no idea why. And you couldn't say that somebody died from a disease. You had to say they died from evil spirits, or had demons inside their bodies. That's what the church was saying at this time. That's when exorcism was really powerful. All priests could perform exorcism. Today, there's hardly any priests that do this stuff. Mind-body dualism is the philosophical viewpoint that the mind and the body are separate entities that do not interact. Mind-body, that's the mind-body dualism idea. So your brain doesn't control the rest of your body. Your brain can't make your body sick. Your body can't make your brain sick. So if you get a cold, yeah, I guess it's in your head. If you have tuberculosis, it's not going to make you depressed because your body doesn't have anything to do with your mind. Andreas Vesalius lived from 1514 to 1564. He's the one that made all these pictures. They're not really obscene because they're showing you medical structures. They're trying to talk about the muscles of the body, of the human body, and as you can see, they all tie together. Here's your quadriceps. These are your quadriceps. Here's your triceps up here, your biceps, all of this stuff. Just trying to show you what would happen. Now this is kind of a funny picture because this guy's got a knife in one hand and all of his skin in the other. So evidently he cut his own skin off. As cute as that is. One of the first volumes of anatomy was printed after the Dark Ages was Flemish anatomist Vesalius' 7-volume study of the musculature, the internal organs, and the skeletal system of humans, as much fun as that is. There you go. That's what people look like on the inside, because he just cut off his skin with a knife. Rene Descartes was a French philosopher in the 17th century. That's when he philosophized. Rene Descartes was, that's what I say, he was also a mathematician. He described the human form as a machine. He thought of us as a machine. So if you move your arm up, your bicep tightens up and your triceps are relaxing if you move your arm up. If you move your arm down, your biceps is relaxing and your tricep is doing all the work. So he saw the human body as a machine. Descartes was able to describe the basic reflexes of the human body. If you tap on your tendon in your knee, then your foot kicks. Descartes believed that the problem with the body caused a problem in the mind, a philosophy known as body-mind dualism or Cartesian dualism. Actually, that was Cartesian dualism. He was the first person to say that your mind could affect your body. So if you were depressed, then you might catch a cold. Or if you're angry, then you might have a heart attack. All of these things, he saw all these things as tied together. And that was Rene Descartes. Post-Renaissance rationality shifted from mysticism to the biological causes of diseases. We were trying to figure out where they came from. We were trying to identify viruses. We were trying to identify bacteria, but we couldn't see them. And then Anton van Leeuwenhoek developed the first microscope, and after that we realized that there were tiny little things in there that might potentially cause problems. This is the first microscope, as weird as that sounds. So you put your sample in here, and then you held it really close to your eye. And because it was beveled glass, it would make the, whatever was in there much, much larger. It would magnify it. And that's the first microscope. When I worked in the laboratory, I worked with a microscope constantly. We were either looking at blood, or we were looking at feces, or we were looking at urine, or we were looking at bacteria and microbiology. This was my job, was looking through a microscope. And I had a really good time doing it. I'll brag about some of the things that I discovered later. Discoveries in the 19th century included cellular theory, a theory that disease results from abnormalities in body cells. If they malfunction, they will die, and that's the way it works. If your kidneys stop working, then your kidneys will die. And of course, then you either excise them or you die. That's the way it works. Germ theory, the theory that disease is caused by microorganisms. Pasteur first demonstrated the presence of bacteria using more and more sophisticated microscopes. Of course, you can see Pasteur looking through a microscope here. Leeuwenhoek, of course, that's what his microscope looked like. They started magnifying more and more and more. The larger they became, the more they magnified. And there you go. So that's what was going on. Now you can blame all the crazy soldiers for giving you contaminated blankets, but the reality is they had no idea where diseases came from. They were just as ignorant as anybody else. They didn't know. Of course, all the diseases were coming from them. Tuberculosis, you'd never had tuberculosis. Was not here. The one thing that you did have was sexually transmitted diseases, as weird as that is. They first picked up syphilis and gonorrhea in the Caribbean when Columbus, remember, Columbus sailed the ocean blue 1492. Okay. That's the first time they ever saw any sexually transmitted diseases. So the sexually transmitted diseases were here, and then we gave you everything else. You guys gave us the clap, and we gave you everything else. And that's on tape. Oh, great. 1846, William Morton discovered that ether could be used as an anesthetic. Ether is a form of alcohol. It's a heavy alcohol is what it is. It is in liquid form, but it's also in gaseous form. If I had ether, I could pour it on the table, and it would run off the table and onto the floor. It's a heavy gas, is what it is. And because of that, of course, it goes right into your lungs, and then it knocks you out. Wonderfully, this revolutionized the process of surgery, which could now be done with a patient who was pain-free because he was knocked out, and completely relaxed. So before, of course, you had to give him alcohol. That's the only way you could knock him out. And sometimes alcohol makes you move too much. And of course, sometimes the surgery was unsuccessful. 1895, William Röntgen, a German physicist, discovered X-rays that were eventually used to observe internal organs, not to mention the disposition of the skeletal system. This is the first X-ray ever taken. It is of his wife's hand, and here is her wedding ring. There you go. So we know that they were properly married because we have a picture of her wedding ring. This is her hand right here. That's her hand. Anyway, it's like that. And that's her wedding ring. Oh, that's my wedding ring. I started wearing this other ring. It fit. It's the only finger it fits. Yeah. I should have my X-ray taken. I used to be an X-ray tech. It's a lot of fun. 20th century, dawn of a new era. The biomedical model was developed. The idea that illness always has a physical cause, this became a dominant view of the 20th century medicine, and that's where I come in. I started working in medicine in 1971. Biomedical model embraced reductionism. Complex phenomena derive ultimately from a single primary factor. One of the things that we look at, we see all of these people are sick, so now we have to figure out where it came from. So we follow it backwards and to the first person, and we try to determine what that first person who became sick, what they were doing, what they ingested, how they became sick. Wait a minute. Oh, no, we were talking about something else. Okay. The biomedical model is based on the Cartesian doctrine of mind-body dualism. We know that almost all diseases come from something. But of course, we have mental illnesses that don't come from any place. Sometimes. What if you develop schizophrenia after smoking marijuana? Does marijuana cause schizophrenia? Not always, but sometimes it actually does, as weird as that sounds. Health is viewed as simply the absence of disease. That's a biomedical model. So all we were trying to do was take away your symptoms. We're trying to make you feel better. As long as you felt good, then we didn't care whether you were ready to commit suicide. We didn't care about if you had any friends or not. All we wanted to do was take your symptoms away. And of course, that has to do with the doctors of today. Doctors of today will give you medication that take your symptoms away. But then they don't talk to you about how you're doing at home, is anybody pissed off at you, and you get angry too much, that kind of stuff. They don't talk about that kind of stuff because they don't care. What they care about is taking care of getting you in and getting you out, and giving you the medication that will take your symptoms away. You go in there with a cold, they don't want to know whether you're depressed, that doesn't make any difference to them. They just want to throw cold medicine at you so your symptoms will go away. They want your symptoms to go away because if you develop pneumonia, now it's their fault because they already treated you for your cold and they didn't treat you strongly enough to make your cold go away. And now you've got pneumonia, so it's their fault. And now you can sue them, so go out and, well, not here at IHS, they can't sue anybody in IHS. A pathogen is a virus, a bacterium, or some other microorganism that causes a particular disease. How am I doing on time? Okay. Wait a minute, when did we stop? 4:20.
Yep.
Okay. Let me tell you a quick story. Once upon a time, I went to South and Central America. This is when I went to Peru, and we went to see all the Inca stuff. That was kind of cool. Then we went to Central America, and we went to Guatemala. And in Guatemala, we ate at restaurants. And sometimes the restaurants were really expensive. So we were running out of money really fast. So we told the guy, stop taking us to such expensive restaurants. So he took us to this dive in Guatemala City. And some of us ate the chicken and some of us ate, what else did he have? I think beef or something. They had steak. The steak was okay, but the chicken was contaminated with cyclospora. Cyclospora is an amoeba, and it causes dysentery. And sadly enough, I ate the chicken. And I got really, really sick. Not only did I get sick, but half of the people on the trip got sick. It was really kind of a tragedy. We all got sick, and we got really sick. I mean, this is really pretty good. I know. I was upset. It was really weird too, because I got so sick that if I looked at that wall, which is an off-white, I would see yellow. Everything was yellow to me. I mean, it was just the most bizarre thing in the world. I was vomiting, I had diarrhea. I mean, it was just god-awful. Because it's in my intestines, of course, cyclospora. It's an amoeba that infects your intestines. So this was an amoeba. It was a pathogen. The people that live in Guatemala who are around this pathogen all the time, they don't have to worry about it. They don't get cyclospora. But I was a visitor. As a matter of fact, they had been in civil war for 14 years, and we were the first group to go back into Guatemala. It was a Fulbright trip, and it was fun. We had a great time, until we all got sick. One person almost died because of the pathogen. It was really kind of tragic. Another person eventually died of an aneurysm, and she died just a couple of years ago. This is in 2003 that we went down there. But she just died last year of an aneurysm that was caused by the cyclospora that she had in 2003. Now the sad thing about her was she couldn't, the way they treated you was with sulfa drugs, but she couldn't take sulfa drugs. She was allergic to sulfa drugs. So they didn't have an antibiotic to treat her with. So they treated her with broad spectrum antibiotics, and the cyclospora caused her to have all kinds of interesting problems. She created an aneurysm in her brain that they never detected, and then it blew and she died. What a happy story. So this is an amoeba. This is a living single-celled animal that wiggles its tail and swims all over the place. And that's what I came down with, cyclospora. There's a bunch of other amoeba. You can get Giardia lamblia, E. coli. There's an E. coli. It's got the same name as the bacteria that causes all the problems. Anyway, these are all pathogens, viruses and bacterium. The smallpox is caused by varicella zoster. Herpes is caused by varicella zoster. Chickenpox is caused by varicella zoster. Shingles is chickenpox that you had when you were a kid, and now it stayed in your system, and now it re-emerges when you're immunocompromised, as fun as that is. So here you have chickenpox when you're 3, and then when you're 55, you develop shingles, and it's the same virus. It stays in your system.
So you can get shingles again after chickenpox?
Yeah. If you never have chickenpox, you can't get shingles. How about that? But if you get inoculated against chickenpox, you can develop shingles later on in life.
But isn't there a vaccine you're supposed to get after like 40 or 50 for the shingles now? If you have
Yeah,
shingles?
there's 2 different types of vaccination. I was given the shingles shot, and it blew my shoulder out. I know. So you pay for it. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Bradley, can you tell me how you get chickenpox when you're young?
How you get it?
Yeah.
Or you come in contact with it. You come in contact with the virus. So let's say Amanda's got the chickenpox, and she slaps me on the back.
Where's it coming
And she's
from?
got a fever, of course. She's got a fever. She doesn't know she has chickenpox.
What causes it? Where's it coming from?
Yeah, so you come in contact with the virus. Because
She's saying like, where did it start from? The Europeans living with the chickens?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, that's where it came from. Europeans living with their chickens. Where did smallpox come from? Cowpox. The Europeans living with their cows. They weren't having sex. They were just living with them, and they were trading bacteria or viruses back and forth. That's where it came from.
So, I mean, I'm not like a biology major, so I wouldn't know this, and maybe people do know, but like those things when you cook meat, I mean, my thinking is that those things would die off
They do.
as you're cooking them.
They do.
So in Peru or wherever it is you went, was your meat not cooked through?
No, it wasn't. It was chicken. And you know, chicken's supposed to be tender, right? It's supposed to be juicy. Well, that juicy part is not very cooked part. Is
Yeah.
not very cooked part.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not very good with chicken anymore, as like you could possibly imagine. I used to eat chicken. You know, we had chicken twice a week when I was in elementary school 100 years ago. Yeah. Yes, it came from the chickens. The chickens got it from the humans, and the humans gave it back to the chickens. And then it developed into chickenpox. Are those guys okay? Do they know where they're going? Okay. We'll assume they do. Okay. Isn't this fun? And these are known as pathogens. And something that is not a pathogen to me, the cold virus wouldn't kill me off, but if you guys have no immunity to these viruses, potentially it will wipe you out. I mean, all these are Europeans that came down with chickenpox, with measles, with mumps, with all of these diseases. They had enough immunity that it didn't kill them. But when they gave it to the indigenous peoples of the Americas, it killed them off. And the reason it did is because they had no immunity at all. So in time, let's talk about alcohol for an example. Alcohol, if I drink alcohol, it kills me. But I have babies, and those babies will drink alcohol, and it won't kill them as quickly as it killed me. And then when they have babies, they'll drink alcohol, and it won't kill them as quickly as it did their parents and their grandparents. And that's the way it works. Europeans are professional drinkers. They've been drinking for thousands and thousands of years. You guys are amateurs. You've been drinking for 400 or 500 years. That's the way it works. It works the same way with bacteria. So even though the measles killed off whole villages of Native Americans, it didn't kill off the Europeans, because they'd had it for thousands of years. They'd been coming down with the measles for thousands of years. Some of them died, most of them didn't. And that's how they developed the immunity. As much fun as that is. So when you go down to Mexico and you eat the food down there, you get the squirts, you get dysentery. So why the hell don't all those Mexicans have dysentery? Why don't they? For one thing, they build up immunity. The other thing is their diet has a lot of peppers. They have a lot of chilies. So their stomach acid is different than mine. It's certainly different than mine. It's probably different from yours too. Unless you eat, what are those, habaneros? Okay, yeah. They're really hot. Okay. And they eat those all the time. I was playing softball on a Mexican softball team. They were actually from Mexico. They weren't Mexican Americans, they were Mexican. This was in Lubbock, Texas, and those guys brought up some peppers from down in Mexico, and they were feeding them to everybody. And so, since, you know, I'm a stupid white guy, so somebody gave me a pepper and I ate it, and it blistered my mouth. And these guys are eating these things like they were bananas, you know, they were just eating them like crazy. And everybody's just going nuts. It almost killed me just from eating those habanero peppers. It blistered my mouth. My tongue was all swollen. So here I am, I'm playing left field, and I can't yell at the field though, because I got the ball because my tongue's all swollen. And his wife, oh my God, his wife just about killed him. She called him all kinds of a son of a bitch. And I understand Spanish. I understand son of a bitch. She called it. Oh man, she just about killed him. He apologized. He wanted to take care of my kids for a week so that I was okay. You know, that kind of stuff. It was fun. We had a good time. And eventually my mouth healed, okay? They were sweet, sweet people. They were trying to find me a wife. I wasn't married at the time, and I had 2 little kids. And they were gonna find me a wife. Oh my, I have a cousin, she's only 17, but she'll come up here and she'll take care of your babies. The 20th century, the dawn of the new era, psychosomatic medicine is an outdated branch of medicine focused on the diagnosis and treatment of physical diseases caused by faulty mental processes. Doctors, taking a more critical view of causes of diseases, started a trend toward the modern view of illness and health as multifactorial. The different factors show an interaction of host, environmental, behavioral, and psychological factors. So we started looking at things not just from a disease point of view, but from a social point of view. What's your environment like? We had a really difficult time figuring out the bubonic plague because we couldn't figure why the poor people were getting sick. Why were they getting sick? Because they lived with rats. That's why they were getting sick.
I wonder if it was kind of like that when they first, when hantavirus was here. Like, people were just dying and they didn't know it was from the deer mice.
I was here when that happened.
I saw it on Forensic Files.
Okay.
I was like, hey, no, that place. Just kidding.
That's weird. It was really strange because my wife was about to leave for Korea, which is an isolated tour. I couldn't go with her. So, you know, It's a week before we have a chance to leave. And so we decided we were going to take a trip. We were going to look at Chaco Canyon. We're going to go to Chaco Canyon. We're going to look at all the Anasazi ruins. That's what we were planning on doing. So we came to this area and they wouldn't let us in because of the outbreak of the hantavirus. And it was killing healthy teenagers, you know, people that shouldn't die from any infection like that. But it was killing them. It was scary.
What was interesting though, is that when they went and saw like a medicine man, he had told him that like this sort of disease spreads after a big winter and they should look at, you know, the rodents. And so it was like they kind of already knew, but they didn't, it wasn't until like later on that they tested the feces in the mice. And it was, they had like that hantavirus.
Isn't that stupid?
Yeah.
This old fart. Well, then why in the world should I listen to this old fart? That's the way medical people are. They're so much smarter than everybody else. It's really kind of tragic. Doctors don't listen to anybody. And this is a really serious problem. While Europe continued to be enamored with Freud and psychoanalysis throughout the beginning of the 20th century, the psychologists in the United States were looking for something more interactive to use. We're Americans and we want to be fixed quick. Freud takes way too much time. We have to tell him too much stuff. We want a new way of looking at mental illness. And so that's what we did. We developed our own brand of mental illness. If we look at the theorists, Rogers, Jung, all the people from this era, they were individuals who started out as psychoanalysts. They started out as Freudians, and they added to what Freud said. Erickson is another good example. The result was behaviorism, which accelerated the treatment process and resulted in a more definitive diagnosis. Behaviorism comes from B.F. Skinner, comes from Watson first and then B.F. Skinner. And of course, we were able to fix people really fast. That's how we do it in the United States. We don't take too much time. It costs too much money. We want to do things as fast as we possibly can. We want that we want that sucker to go right back to work. We want to send him back to work tomorrow, because if he doesn't work, then we lose all this production time. That's the way we think in the United States. In Europe, of course, they're a little bit different. When I was living in Germany in the 1970s, they got a month off every year to go for a spa treatment. And it was free, the government paid for it. A month off every year to go to the spa. They have spas all over Germany. And the government paid for it. Isn't that cool? I want to be German. Oh, wait a minute, I want to be Spanish. I can't remember. I don't know what I'm going to be next. In the 1970s, Neil Miller was able to use operant conditioning techniques to teach animals and humans how to control their bodily functions. And this was huge. This was gigantic. Biofeedback. We used biofeedback so that we could control people. Now it didn't cost as much money. We're always talking about money. We're always talking about time. The two most important things to people in the United States. Humans could control hypertension and their heart rate if they were aware how high their blood pressure was. And they used biofeedback to do that. Behavioral medicine is the interdisciplinary field that integrates behavioral and biomedical science in promoting health and treating diseases. One method that is used is, of course, biofeedback, as I was just saying. And this is what's going on here. He is looking at his heart rate, she's checking his blood pressure, and then they will tell him to relax. They'll tell him to meditate, to think, to go to his happy place. Okay. Happy place. This is my happy place. I'm here right now. What's I'm doing? Okay. In 1978, the APA, the American Psychological Association, established the Division of Health Psychology, that's Division 38, and laid down 4 goals for the new field. To study scientifically the causes of origins of specific diseases, that is their etiology. They're trying to find out how things start, why they start. Depression, suicide, where do these things come from? Anxiety, where does it come from? Health psychologists are primarily interested in the psychological, behavioral, and social origins of any disease. So why are we having this problem right here on the reservation? Why is this happening? That's what we were doing with the bubonic plague. We're trying to figure out why it was there. 2 people came down with it. Who are these people? Were they old? Were they young? Same thing happened with the hantavirus. That's why it spooked everybody, because it wasn't affecting the old people. Usually it kills old people and babies, and all of a sudden it was the healthiest people on the reservation. It was killing those people. And why were they the ones being infected? Because they were the ones cleaning the barn. That's why they were being infected. They investigate why people engage in health compromising behaviors, and of course, drinking alcohol, coffee is actually supposed to lower heart disease, as weird as that sounds, but cigarettes don't do anything positive for you. I guess it relaxes you to some extent. No, it's a vasoconstrictor, so that doesn't do that. There's nothing good about tobacco. There's nothing good about alcohol. Sure there is. Alcohol relaxes you if you only take 1 drink. It's the 2nd drink that kills you, or the 3rd drink, or the 4th drink. All that stuff kills you. How about drugs? Oh, psilocybin. We can treat depression with it. Okay. Why don't we stop right here and we'll pick this up next time, as much fun as that is. And I'll try not to talk about diarrhea. I'll try to. Anyway, my best story is about diarrhea. I got a really good story about diarrhea. Just wait.